Karen stands at my doorstep, her face contorted with rage. Her manicured finger jabs at 911 on her phone. "Your dog is a menace to society. I can't take it anymore," she screams, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. I emerge from my home, confused but determined. "She's done this too many times," I say firmly, looking straight into the camera. But this time, I won't back down. The truth about Karen and why she hates my gentle dog will shock everyone to their core. Let me introduce myself. I'm Alex, a dedicated animal lover who moved to Oakwood Estates just 6 months ago. After years in the bustling city, I was desperate for some peace and quiet, a place where both Buddy and I could finally breathe. Buddy is my 4-year-old golden retriever, the gentlest soul you'll ever meet. His warm eyes and wagging tail have won over everyone in the neighborhood. Well, almost everyone. He's been my loyal companion since he was a puppy, helping me through some of life's toughest moments with his unwavering loyalty. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson," I call out, waving to my elderly neighbor as Buddy and I take our morning walk. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Mr. Peterson smiles warmly. "Indeed it is, Alex. And how's my favorite 4-legged friend doing today?" He bends down to pet Buddy, who responds with delighted tail wags. These pleasant interactions make the contrast with Karen Williams all the more jarring. Karen, the iron-fisted HOA president of Oakwood Estates, has made it her personal mission to make my life miserable since day one. You've seen her type before: perfectly highlighted bob haircut, designer sunglasses perpetually perched on her head, and that permanent look of disapproval etched across her face. She patrols the neighborhood in her white SUV like a shark circling its prey. "Your grass is a 1/4 inch too high," she informed me during my second week here, clipboard in hand. "And your mailbox is the wrong shade of beige. You'll need to repaint it immediately." But nothing, absolutely nothing, seems to offend Karen more than Buddy's existence. The hostility began with sideways glances and exaggerated steps to avoid us on walks. Then came the passive-aggressive notes left on my door. "Your dog's barking is disrupting the community's tranquility," one note read, though my neighbors repeatedly assured me they'd never heard Buddy make excessive noise. Last month, things escalated when Karen secretly photographed Buddy playing in my fenced backyard. She posted these images on the community Facebook page with an alarming caption: "Dangerous dog alert. This aggressive animal poses a serious threat to our children and elderly residents." I was floored. The photos showed Buddy playfully chasing a butterfly, his tongue lolling happily to the side. "Karen, this is ridiculous," I confronted her at the monthly HOA meeting. "Buddy has never shown aggression toward anyone. He's certified as a therapy dog. For heaven's sake," she simply sniffed, adjusted her pearl necklace, and replied, "I know a dangerous animal when I see one. Perhaps in your previous neighborhood, such beasts were acceptable, but Oakwood Estates has standards." My attempts to reason with her fell on deaf ears. Other neighbors would offer sympathetic glances, but remained silent, too intimidated by Karen's power to speak up. And now, here we are with Karen standing on my doorstep, phone in hand, calling the police about my supposed dangerous animal. Something doesn't add up, and I'm determined to uncover what's really driving this vendetta against my gentle companion. The police cruiser pulls up to my driveway at precisely 10:37 a.m., its presence immediately drawing curious glances from neighbors peering through their blinds. 2 officers step out: a tall, stern-looking man with salt and pepper hair and a younger female officer, who seems more approachable. "Good morning, sir. I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Chen," the male officer says, his hand resting casually on his belt. "We've received a complaint about a dangerous dog on the premises. Mind if we take a look?" My heart pounds against my rib cage. "A dangerous dog? There must be some mistake," I reply, struggling to keep my voice steady. "My dog, Buddy, is completely harmless." Officer Chen glances down at her notepad. "We have a report that your dog allegedly attacked someone in the neighborhood. We need to investigate the claim." Behind the officers, Karen stands with her arms crossed, a smug expression plastered across her face. She's wearing her signature HOA blazer, a power move she reserves for special occasions. That's absolutely false, I protest, my voice rising despite my best efforts to remain calm. Buddy has never attacked anyone. He's a certified therapy dog who visits children's hospitals. For crying out loud, Officer Martinez raises his hand slightly. Sir, we understand you're upset, but we need to see the dog and assess the situation. I reluctantly invite them in, calling Buddy from his bed in the living room. He trots over obediently, tail wagging and ears perked forward, the very picture of canine friendliness. This is Buddy, I say, as he sits perfectly at my command. As you can see, he's well-trained and gentle. Officer Chen bends down, allowing Buddy to sniff her hand before giving him a scratch behind the ears. He seems well-behaved, she admits, a small smile forming at the corners of her mouth. Just as the tension begins to ease, Karen's shrill voice pierces the air from my front yard. That's the dog. That's the dangerous animal I told you about. She's standing at the edge of my property, pointing dramatically at Buddy through the open door. It lunged at Mrs. Abernathy's granddaughter last week. I saw it with my own eyes. My blood boils. That's a complete lie. Buddy was at the groomer's all day last Thursday. By now, a small crowd has gathered on the sidewalk. I recognize the Johnsons from across the street, the elderly Patels from next door, and several other neighbors, some looking concerned, others clearly enjoying the drama. I've lived here for 15 years, Karen announces to the growing audience, her voice projecting like she's on stage. And I've never seen such a blatant disregard for community safety. To my dismay, a few neighbors nod in agreement. Miss S. Henderson, whose garden club I'd politely declined to join last month, whispers something to Mr. Daniels, who shakes his head disapprovingly in my direction. Officer Martinez steps outside to address the situation, while Officer Chen continues her assessment of Buddy, who's now rolled onto his back, hoping for belly rubs. There's no evidence of aggression here, Officer Chen tells me quietly, but you should know that multiple complaints have been filed through the HOA about your dog. Multiple complaints? That's impossible, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. 3 days later, an official-looking envelope arrives from the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. Inside is a notice of violation and a $500 fine for harboring a dangerous animal in violation of community safety standards. The letter is signed by Karen Williams, HOA president, her signature an elaborate flourish of self-importance. That evening, my phone buzzes with text messages from neighbors I thought were friends. Is it true your dog bit the Abernathy girl? Why didn't you tell us Buddy had aggression issues? Maybe you should consider a muzzle when walking him. I sit on my porch steps, Buddy's head resting on my knee, and feel the walls closing in around us. Through my neighbor's window, I can see Karen on her phone, gesturing animatedly as she peers in my direction. What did we ever do to you? I whisper into the evening air. Buddy looks up at me with those trusting brown eyes, completely unaware of the storm surrounding him. I scratch behind his ears and make him a solemn promise. We're not going down without a fight, Buddy. Something isn't right here, and I'm going to find out what it is. As the sun sets over Oakwood Estates, I make a decision. It's time to dig deeper into Karen's past and discover what's really driving this vendetta against my innocent dog. The morning sun filters through my kitchen blinds, casting striped shadows across the official HOA letter that now lies on my countertop like a ticking bomb. I've read it 17 times since it arrived yesterday, each reading more painful than the last. The words swim before my eyes, bold and merciless final notice. The Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association hereby demands the removal of the dangerous animal known as Buddy from the premises within 7 days of this notice. Failure to comply will result in legal action, additional fines of $100 per day, and possible foreclosure proceedings as permitted under HOA bylaws, Section 7.3. My coffee has long gone cold, untouched beside the letter. Buddy lies at my feet, his chin resting on my slippered foot, a gesture of comfort he's offered since the day I adopted him. He senses my distress, looking up occasionally with those soulful eyes that seem to ask, "What's wrong? How did we get here, Buddy?" I whisper, reaching down to stroke his golden fur. What did we ever do to deserve this? The ultimatum feels like a physical blow. 7 days. 168 hours before I'm expected to remove my best friend, my family, from our home. The clinical language of the letter disguises the cruelty of what they're asking. Where would I send him? How could I possibly explain to Buddy why I've abandoned him? I take a shaky breath and step outside onto my porch, needing fresh air to clear my head. Across the street, Miss S. Patel is tending to her roses. When she sees me, she quickly looks away and hurries inside. The Johnsons' children, who used to beg to play with Buddy, are now ushered quickly past my house by their mother, who avoids eye contact. It's as if overnight, we've become pariahs in our own neighborhood. That evening, as Buddy and I sit on the back porch watching the sunset, one of 7 we have left together, if Karen gets her way, my doorbell rings. It's Mr. Finch, the oldest resident of Oakwood Estates. At 87, he rarely leaves his home at the end of the cul-de-sac, yet here he stands, leaning heavily on his cane. "May I come in, young man?" he asks, his voice wavering slightly with age. "I believe we need to talk." I usher him inside, grateful for any friendly face. Buddy approaches slowly, respectfully, as if understanding Mr. Finch's fragility. The old man smiles and extends a gnarled hand for Buddy to sniff. "Good boy," he murmurs. Just as I thought. No mean bone in his body. Over tea that he insists I make proper and strong, Mr. Finch reveals what he knows. "Karen Williams wasn't always the terror of Oakwood Estates," he begins, his weathered hands wrapped around the teacup. "Back when she was just a girl, couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, her family lived across town. There was an incident with a golden retriever much like your Buddy." My breath catches. "What happened?" Mr. Finch sighs deeply. "The dog belonged to her neighbors. By all accounts, it was gentle, much like your boy here. But one day, something spooked at a car backfiring, they said, and it jumped the fence. Karen was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was bitten?" I ask, pieces starting to fall into place. "Yes, but that's not all. The scar on her left arm that she always covers with those fancy blazers? That's from the incident. But here's what few people know, Mr. Finch leans forward, lowering his voice, as if Karen might be listening. 5 years ago, before you moved in, she did something similar to the Hendersons. They had a chocolate lab named Charlie. Karen claimed it attacked her, demanded its removal. The whole neighborhood turned against them. My stomach tightens. What happened? They gave Charlie away to family in another state. Broke their daughter's heart. Mr. Finch shakes his head sadly. But 3 months later, Miss S. Rodriguez caught Karen in a lie. Turns out, Charlie had never attacked her. Karen had fabricated the whole thing, because the Hendersons had opposed her becoming HOA president. I sit back, stunned. Did the Hendersons ever find out? They'd already moved away by then, too heartbroken to stay. Mr. Finch's eyes grow misty. That's why I came tonight. I couldn't bear to see history repeat itself. I was a coward then, staying silent. I won't make that mistake again. As Mr. Finch leaves, he places a frail hand on my shoulder. Fight for your dog, young man. Some battles are worth the scars they leave. That night, I hold Buddy close, burying my face in his fur as tears stream down my cheeks. He licks my face gently, unaware that his very existence in our home hangs by a thread. I promise you this, I whisper fiercely into his ear. I will not let her win. Not this time. I look into Buddy's trusting eyes and feel something harden within me, a resolve that wasn't there before. Mr. Finch's revelations have given me hope, but also a responsibility. This isn't just about saving my dog anymore. It's about exposing a pattern of cruelty and manipulation that has hurt others before us. As Buddy settles against me, his heart beats steady against mine, I make a silent vow. We're not going anywhere, Buddy. This is our home, and we're going to fight for it. What would you do in my situation? How would you protect your furry family member from such injustice? Share your thoughts below. I could really use your advice right now. 5 days remain before the HOA's ultimatum expires. 5 days before I'm supposed to surrender Buddy to some unknown fate. But something has shifted inside me. Desperation has crystallized into determination. We're not victims anymore, Buddy, I whisper to him during our morning walk, carefully avoiding the neighbors who now cross the street when they see us coming. It's time we fought back. My first stop is the law office of Patricia Zhang, a college friend who specializes in property disputes. Her office is modest but professional, with framed diplomas and a small statue of Lady Justice on her desk. They can't just force you to get rid of your dog without proper evidence, Patricia says, flipping through the HOA bylaws with expert precision. Karen's overstepping her authority here. Look, she points to a highlighted section. Any animal removal requires documented incidents verified by animal control or police, plus a formal hearing before the full board. Has any of that happened? No, I reply, hope flickering to life. The police came but found nothing wrong with Buddy. Patricia's eyes narrow. Then we have grounds to fight this. But we need evidence that Buddy isn't dangerous. And ideally, proof that Karen is targeting you specifically. That afternoon, I visit every neighbor who has ever interacted with Buddy. Most doors close in my face, but a few the Patels, the Ramirez, and surprisingly, the Johnsons agree to provide written statements about Buddy's gentle nature. Miss S. Johnson even shows me videos on her phone of Buddy, patiently allowing her toddler to pet him during block parties last summer. I'm sorry we've been avoiding you, she admits, shame coloring her cheeks. Karen told everyone your dog had suddenly become aggressive due to an illness. She seemed so certain. Back home, I make another crucial decision. Within hours, a discreet security company has installed 3 cameras around my property, one facing the front yard, another monitoring the backyard fence, and a third overlooking the side path where Buddy often naps in the afternoon sun. Now we wait, I tell Buddy, scratching behind his ears. Let's see what happens when Karen thinks no one's watching. I don't have to wait long. At 7:13 in the next morning, my phone buzzes with a security alert. On my screen, I watch in disbelief as Karen, dressed in her morning jogging outfit, approaches my front yard, looks around furtively, then tosses what appears to be hamburger meat over my fence. Buddy, thankfully inside with me, isn't there to take the bait. 2 hours later, she returns, this time rattling my gate loudly and making kissing noises, clearly trying to agitate Buddy, who barks from inside the house. She immediately pulls out her phone, recording the barking as if documenting aggressive behavior. But the most damning evidence comes that evening. As I review the day's footage, I notice Karen showing something to Miss S. Abernathy near my property line, a photograph on her phone that causes the older woman to gasp and step back in horror. Using the camera's high-resolution zoom feature, I can clearly see what she's displaying. A photoshopped image of a golden retriever baring its teeth aggressively, with Buddy's distinctive collar digitally added to the picture. Gotcha, I whisper, downloading all the footage. The emergency HOA meeting is called for Friday evening, 48 hours before my deadline. The community center buzzes with tension as neighbors file in, curious about the urgent session. Karen sits at the head table, her blazer impeccably pressed, confidence radiating from her posture. Before we begin, I announce, standing up with a folder of documents and my laptop, I'd like to present some evidence regarding the complaints against my dog. Karen's smile falters slightly. This meeting has a specific agenda, which includes due process for any animal removal orders. Patricia interjects smoothly from beside me. As required by your own bylaws, Section 4.2. For the next 20 minutes, the room sits in stunned silence as I present my case, the neighbor testimonials, the police report finding no aggression, and finally, the damning security footage showing Karen's deliberate attempts to frame Buddy. When the video of Karen photoshopping evidence plays on the projector screen, audible gasps fill the room. Mrs. Abernathy stands up, her voice shaking with anger. "You showed me that picture and told me it was taken last week. You said that dog nearly attacked my granddaughter." Karen's face drains of color. I can explain, but there's nothing to explain. The evidence is overwhelming. By meeting's end, the HOA board has unanimously rescinded the removal order and called for Karen's immediate resignation. As we leave the meeting, neighbors approach one by one to apologize and pet Buddy, who wags his tail forgivingly at each person. Mr. Finch gives me a knowing nod from across the room. Outside, under the gentle glow of street lamps, I kneel beside Buddy and press my forehead to his. "We did it, boy," I whisper, my voice thick with emotion. "We're home. For good." The weeks following Karen's public disgrace unfold like a dream one where justice actually prevails and the good guys win. I still find myself checking the mail with a slight twinge of anxiety, half expecting another HOA letter, but instead, I find invitations to neighborhood barbecues and dog playdates. Karen's downfall is swift and complete. The HOA board, eager to distance themselves from the scandal, votes unanimously to impose the maximum fine allowable $5. For falsifying evidence, and another $2,500 for property trespassing and attempted pet endangerment. The police file additional charges for filing false reports, resulting in community service and a formal restraining order that requires her to stay at least 100 feet from both Buddy and me. "Karma," Mrs. Ramirez says with satisfaction when we pass on our morning walk, Buddy prancing proudly beside me with a new blue bandana around his neck. Some people need to learn the hard way. The most surprising development comes when the Hendersons, the family who had moved away after giving up their chocolate lab, return for a visit after hearing about what happened. Their daughter, now a teenager, kneels beside Buddy with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for standing up to her," she whispers to me. "We're bringing Charlie home next week." The family we gave him to agreed he should come back where he belongs. Karen's once immaculate house now sits quiet, the blinds perpetually drawn. Rumors circulate that she's planning to sell and move away. I feel no joy in her isolation, only relief that her reign of terror has ended. Sometimes, healing requires distance. On Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood hosts its first ever Buddy Day celebration in the community park. Dogs of all sizes romp through the grass, while their owners chat and laugh. Buddy, wearing a ridiculous cape Mr. Finch, made him that reads HOA hero, accepts treats and pets like royalty holding court. "You know what's funny?" Dave Johnson says, handing me a cold beer as we watch the festivities. "Karen always said dogs would lower property values. Since this whole thing happened, 3 houses have sold all above asking price. Turns out people want to live in a neighborhood that stands up for what's right." Miss S. Patel approaches with a plate of samosas, grinning mischievously. "Perhaps we should send Karen a thank you note and suggest she get a puppy of her own. Might help with that personality of hers." Everyone laughs, and I can't help joining in. As the golden afternoon light bathes the park, Buddy trots back to me, tongue lolling happily, and flops at my feet with an exhausted sigh of contentment. I reach down to scratch his ears, my heart full. "Good boy, Buddy," I whisper. "The very best boy." In the end, it wasn't just about saving my dog, it was about saving our community's soul. And as I look around at the smiling faces and wagging tails, I know we've done exactly that. As the sun sets on our neighborhood celebration, casting long golden shadows across the freshly mowed grass, I find myself sitting alone with Buddy on our front porch. The gentle evening breeze ruffles his fur as he rests his head contentedly on my lap, those soulful brown eyes gazing up at me with pure adoration. "Justice has been served, hasn't it?" I whisper, running my fingers through his silky coat. "Buddy, we actually did it." He responds with a soft woof, as if understanding every word. In this moment of peaceful triumph, I can't help but wonder how many others have faced similar battles with unreasonable neighbors or arbitrary rules. How many stood their ground? How many gave in? Have you ever encountered someone like Karen in your own life? That person who seems determined to make mountains out of molehills, wielding whatever small power they possess like a weapon? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Perhaps you've been the one to stand up against injustice. Or maybe you wish you had. Either way, your experiences matter and could help others facing similar situations. Don't forget to subscribe to catch our next adventure, because life in this neighborhood is never dull for long, and Buddy and I still have many tales to tell.